Hello and welcome to MIP TV, and with me always is Bob Cook from Manchester Institute for Psychotherapy. He's in a different location today. He's out of his studio and into the garden by the look of it, Bob.
Yeah. Our conservatory, because I couldn't get the upstairs computer to work properly. So
well, there you go. There you go, technology for you, Bob. So I got a really good book today, and that is Between Therapist and Client by Michael Kahn. It was first published in 1991, and you've just told me that that's when you first came across this piece of literature.
Yeah, it's a fantastic book. I think many students have it, by the way. I remember when I bought it in 1991, I'd just become a certified transactional analyst. And it was quite revolutionary in some ways, because the sort of major focus of this book is examining the therapeutic relationship in detail between the therapist and the client. And this is, if you put it in context, this is 7 or 8 years before the major research came out by Northcross, is it? Showing that
Northcross.
Showing that the relationship was central to cure, regardless of the modality. So it was before the relational turn, what is called the relational turn, where most modalities started to talk about the relationship being the major vehicle for cure. So it's before then. So it's quite revolutionary looking at the relationship being the effective cure then, and especially looking at transferences and cohort. We talked about cohort. Cohort was the originator of self-psychology, and he was a psychoanalyst. And he was the first psychoanalyst, really, that got out of the chair and said, right, let's talk to each other, sitting in two chairs. And he talked about the importance of Carl Rogers, by the way, and talked about the importance of the humanistic revolution, and came up with ideas like mirroring, the importance of the idealizing transference. So cohort goes into talking about the transferences between the therapist and the client, and talks about the nuances of the therapeutic relationship. So it's a very fascinating book for its context of time in 1991.
Yes, because it's only recently that the conclusion's been come. And you mentioned the work of John Norcross, a psychologist who works out of Scranton University, I think in Pennsylvania. And of course, he's done a big piece of work with Mick Cooper recently. And again, the research, I think it was in 1994 and 2011, showed that, as you say, the relationship, the ability to sustain the therapeutic relationship, and crucially to repair any fractures in it, was absolutely crucial in outcomes in terms of cure or best possible outcomes for clients. So Michael Kahn really is a bit of a kind of trendsetter. He's out there long before this idea gained, real currency.
Yeah, he starts off looking at Freud, of course, the idea of analysis, and then moving on to the humanistic revolution. So he talks about the context of time. He's a great fan of Carl Rogers, and then goes on to look at the relationship. And he talks a lot about the transference between the therapist and the client, and particularly the importance of what Cohort talked about, the mirroring transference and the idealizing transference in the relationship. So the mirroring transference is when basically it's the importance of the therapist to think about how the client needs to be mirrored. Just like a child, in terms of developmental psychology, just like a child needs to be mirrored by the significant object for a sense of self-esteem, and therefore the client does as well.
It's really interesting, because this comes up with lots of sort of object relations theories, doesn't it? And Winnicott is a classic example of that in the false self. Where the child has to develop this kind of egocentric true self and test out the parent, and we see that played out in the therapy room, don't we? Where the client tests out the therapist and looks for a reaction.
That's right. That's right. So Kahn talks about the importance of thinking developmentally, and the importance of thinking transference, and the importance of thinking about the idealizing transference, how important it is for the client to have a significant other which they can look up to, see as more potent, see somebody who's providing protection so they can feel safe enough to actually talk about their challenges. So the idealizing transference and the merging transference, he talks a lot about being central to the relationship.
Yes, it's that chance to grow up again, isn't it? You know, for the child that's had a very difficult for the clients that had an early life, very difficult early life, the idea to be able to grow up again. I got that from Why Love Matters, the book Why Love Matters, the idea that, you know, early developmental deficits can be kind of healed and assuaged by that form of transference. So who do you think this book's good for, Bob? Who benefit from reading this?
I think students who want to understand more about the concept of transference in the relationship, students who want to think about how important the breaking down of what actually happens in a relationship is important, and also students who want to think about the idea of reparative psychotherapy, and also how what Kahn talks about, what he calls re-experiencing the past in the present. In other words, to get a flavour of the early damage. So through the protection and the re-experience of the deficits, you're quite right, the client can grow up again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that's not often talked about, that, I don't think. There's not a lot of emphasis, I don't think, placed on the idea. You know, I hear it in supervision from time to time where they say, you know, the client might be acting out. And what they're doing is they're replaying that early childhood deficit in the therapy room. You know, it's interesting. You know, maybe we do a video on that one day.
And that's why Kahn emphasizes an understanding of transference. In other words, you know, who am I for the client?
Yes.
You know, that's really important when we think of idealizing transferences and mirroring transfers and merging transferences. It's important. And if we think of counter-transference, which Kahn also goes on about, it's the idea of who I am, how I am as a therapist for the client. Sorry, we just said that. Sorry, the other way around. You know, who is the client for me? That's right. So there's two parts. Who, you know, it's the counter-transference, who the client represents for me, and then the other way around, which Kahn talked about as well, which is the actual transfer position in terms of projections. Who do I play for the client? So you've got two parts to that. So he talks about it's really important when you break down a therapeutic relationship to look at the two sides of the transference. So that's important for students to know about transference, because I think actually, I don't know, you'll know more about this than me, but on counselling courses, do they talk a lot about different types of transference?
Did in my courses, Bob, when I taught.
Well, got that in well.
Yeah. There's not a student. There's not a student who I've ever taught on level 4 who didn't know what transference and counter-transference was, because it was built into.
Well, I'm surprised. This is another subject area that I know you and me talk about, and that is the standard of counselling courses. But that's another book, I think. So it's important for people to understand transference when you're talking about therapeutic relationship, because it's not like a relationship you have in, you know, going to have a cup of coffee in Costa's or something. You know, it's a really important question to think about. Who am I in this development process for the clients? And, you know, what is reparative psychotherapy, or what am I actually doing in the unconscious process?
Absolutely, Bob. It's, you know, I think when you're working with that early childhood deficit, and you're really holding the client, you're providing, as Rogers so eloquently said, the soil of a different kind to help the client grow and develop, and to, you know, heal that early rupture of who they are. You know, it's really important to understand, and certainly work through in supervision, you know, both the transference and the counter-transference. Who am I for the client, and who the client is for me? Definitely.
Yeah, because quite often I often think when I supervise, therapists and counsellors alike, that when they think about the relationship being the effective cure, they sort of often think, well, if I'm a friendly person, and providing these sort of core conditions, or I'm, or in psychotherapy terms, being the nurturing parent, perhaps that's enough. And I actually don't think it is. I think an understanding of transference and where we're up to in terms of object relations is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think unless you've got a good handle on that, you can get into all sorts of transferential difficulties, and it may lead the client to project onto you quite strongly. And that's why people need to be quite emotionally robust to do counselling courses. I do think, or any kind of psychotherapy course, I think there's an idea abroad that it's just a case of having a chat and a cup of tea and it's all going to be all right.
Yeah.
It can be quite demanding to hold someone's emotional kind of power, and as Winnicott said, you interject it and without drama. I don't think he actually said without drama, but you interject it, and you play the part of that parent who just allows someone to be and develop that kind of true self. So yeah, I think there's a lot of room to teach a little bit more psychoanalytical theory, even in counselling courses.
Yeah, oh, definitely. And so Carl is really good for these sorts of students who want to go and think about unconscious processes, transference, and the position the therapist plays in terms of developmental psychotherapy, if you want to put it that way. So I think it's a must book.
Yeah. No, I'd agree. So the book we looked at was Between Therapist and Client. It's by Michael Kahn, first published in 1991. If you go downstairs to the link, put a link in so you can click. Bob doesn't get paid, and neither do I for these book reviews. They're done as a kind of service to the wider psychotherapeutic community, and quite frankly, because we've got nothing else to do on a Tuesday night. And we share these books, and Bob shares his knowledge of them because he's read an awful lot. So as always, Bob Cook, thank you very much.
Thank you, Rory.